Well, as far as Jeremy Corbyn is concerned, our relationship goes back a fairly long way. I mean, I got into Parliament in 1970, and I came straight from the coal mines. The reason I became an MP, which a lot of people don't know, is because there was a man scouting around the Bolsover Labour Party who had left the Tory party, worked for the BBC, a friend of Shirley Poppins and Roy Jenkins, Roy of the Waddicals, and Dr. Dare. And somebody said to me, I hope you realise, you keep talking about national politics here at the NUM, it's time that you understood that locally there's a man scouting around Bolsover who's going to get the nomination. And his name was Keith Kyle. I'd never seen him, but apparently he was on a kind of a programme equivalent to Newsnight. And he was an expert in Middle Eastern affairs, so they said. And I made inquiries, and the delegate said, there's only one person can stop him, you know, and I'm in the chair, right? I'm the president of the Derbyshire Miners, the youngest ever, and made a lot of advances in my life. I thought that with a little bit of luck, I'd become a national official. And I thought, Leo, I think you're after my bloody job. Because he was recommending that I take on this Keith Kyle. And it was pretty clear that he was making a formidable challenge for what was traditionally a minor seat. And in those days, there would be anywhere between 13 and 16 pips. And so I realised that I'd got to seriously think about this and allow my name to go forward. And I took on this Keith Kyle. There were 4 of the candidates, and I beat them all on the first ballot. And that was the end of Keith Kyle. He later joined the SDP along with the rest of them. And he stood for St Albans once, he failed. And anyway, now he's dead. Well, it was over me. So that was how it began. And I finished up in Parliament, and then of course Jeremy came about 15 years after me, and I suddenly found that he was in the rebel group. And so when we voted against the Afghanistan war, not many people voted, I'll tell you. A lot of people thought it was necessary to go into Afghanistan after September the 11th. But me, and then when I got in the lobby, I found Jeremy in there. And we actually rebelled on a number of things for several years. And I never thought that one day he'd be leader of the party. But you know that man that preceded him as the leader of the Labour Party, David Miliband, who was portrayed as a left winger. Ed Miliband, sorry. David Miliband was his brother, yeah. Ed Miliband. He decided, in order to try and ensure his survival, recommended to the NEC that they change the voting system whereby all the members voted. Well, I knew that if that happened and a left winger could get on the ballot, then just like me and Tony Benn, who used to top the poll for the NEC with the membership voting, they'd be home and dry. And so when Jeremy got sufficient nominations, and that were a bit of a fluke really, because it was the time when they were nominating a Labour candidate for the Mayor of London. And there were about 7 candidates. So suddenly, MP Sadiq Khan nominated Jeremy, thinking, well, maybe he does, maybe he don't. But he decided to nominate Jeremy. Whereupon another one did, then another one, then another one. And a lot of people don't know that's how Jeremy got the requisite 35. Because in those days, that's what you needed. They changed the pattern today, as you probably know if you've been to the Labour Party Conference. So, the moment he got on the ballot, I knew that he'd be home and dry. And when he campaigned on the hustings, he was by far the best candidate. He was clear. He knew what he wanted to do. And of course, he got the record, like me, of voting against the Iraq war and against a lot of things that Blair wanted us to do. Well, little did they know that Blair was busy buying houses left, right and centre until he finished up with 11. He made a lot of money. You know, he became the kind of envoy for the Middle East. He was going to get Palestine and Israel pals together. And he's still trying. But he has made a lot of money. So, me and Jeremy were pals in a good many ways. We're both on the left of the party, and we're both rebel. So I've been doing it ever since, really. I came into Parliament. But Jeremy now, I mean, he can't rebel. Well, I can. That's roughly it. But we're still pals.
Great. Anyone got a question? There's someone with the mic, so you can around.
Dennis, you're a breath of fresh air. What I'd like to ask you is, do you think there's any chance of the reinstatement of Clause 4 as it was originally written?
Well, it's an idea you're putting in the air. I mean, it's not a thing that's impossible, is it? I mean, the manifesto that we had in the snap election was the best since 1945. There's no question about that. It had a lot of the rings of what happened then. Because remember, I was around in 1945. I was about 13, I think, and I was taking papers around. I knew what politics was. In the war, there were only 4 pages to a paper, and I used to read them all on the way around. You could carry 200 in a bag. You couldn't now, but you did then. And so I knew all about the election. I remember saying to my dad, who was also a coal miner, I said, this Churchill, Dad, I see him on pictures, you know, cinema, because there was no telly then. I said, he's got a, you know, he's always on, he's got that big fat cigar and, you know, V for Victory sign and all this, that, the other. I said, who's that man? And my dad said, it's the most hedging bet answer my father ever gave. He says he's got some good people around him. He never really answered. And I said, it's Clem Attlee, is it? And he was a man of few words, but he did have some good people around him. There's no doubt about that. But more than anything, he had a manifesto which was first class. And that's what caught the imagination of the people. And not only did Clem Attlee beat Churchill, but he won by a landslide. And sure enough, they did things that they said they were going to do. And they built a National Health Service. And they started building loads of council houses. And they introduced industrial injury benefit for people at work. And they had free education from the cradle to the grave. And so, all in all, it was a wonderful government. The sad thing was that it only lasted about 6 years. But in the first 5, they got unemployment down, with all those soldiers coming out of the army and so on. It was down to 2.2%. That's how good they were. And so when I saw that manifesto recently, I realised that it was an exceptionally good manifesto, but it had the ring of 1945 about it. And had that manifesto been launched a few weeks earlier, Jeremy Corbyn would have had the keys to number 10, because it certainly changed the mood totally. And that's what we have to do today, to make sure that we have a manifesto for the next election, whenever it comes, which is going to capture the imagination of a lot of working class people, and we'll be home and dry.
Thank you very much. That was a very inspirational film and also very moving as well, I found, so thank you, Dennis. and beautifully made, I think. It's admirable that you didn't go on all expenses parliamentary sort of trips abroad or whatever, and didn't want to go in the bars. Are there people, though, from the other parties who you did particularly admire? Anyone at all from even from the Tory party? Well, yeah, anybody that you do.
Dead.
Okay, who's that? Do they have to be dead?
And that was John Griffin. He was smart. Thatcher didn't like him. She demoted him. But he was clever, and he finished up as leader of the House, and he used to answer questions. And I used to make scathing remarks about the lids at the time, and he would try and beat me at it. So, yeah, it was the best, but I'd be careful. I mean, I've never mixed with him, quite frankly. I mean, the idea that you go on a trip together to China, I mean, who wants a bloody holiday with tourists? So I've never been on these old pattern things, and quite frankly, I don't think it's damaged me one acre. So I don't mix, and I don't go in the bars principally because all the right-wing journalists are in the strangers' bar, believe me. And so it's not because I'm puritanical. I don't go in because I don't want to mix with people like that. I'd sooner be here at this do here tonight talking to people that have been watching this film. And generally speaking, we're all on the same side. I don't feel deprived in any way whatsoever, because you see, I had 21 years underground. I know what it's like to do real work, and if you want my honest opinion, although the rest of my colleagues hate me saying it, Parliament is a bit of a doddle. And you can't starve on the money. And when I go into work, my father said you'll not have to test the roof lap. Although a bit of plaster did drop off the house a lot. And it wasn't me.
Dennis, obviously from the film you're not scared of public speaking or crowds or taking anything to the Tories. I'm curious, what is Dennis Skinner actually afraid of, if anything?
Well, no, I don't think I'm afraid, no. No, I mean, I've never answered this question before, but I don't think I am, really.
Spiders?
Yeah, I'm not even bloody spider. I mean, when you went down the bloody pit, you know, there were rats. Big rats, believe me. No, it's... I had all that experience long before I went to Parliament, and to be honest, I think, although I don't want to get romantic about the pits, because I can't, it was slavery. The truth is, the camaraderie and the solidarity in the pits was something that you can't measure. I'm sure it happened in the docks as well, and for people that went out to sea. But believe me, in the pits, you're all looking after one another. And we all lived, a lot of us, on the same street. And so when we came home, and you'd see a lot of pigeon courts, you'd see a lot of allotments, you'd see a lot of people going out into the countryside. And believe me, when I came up the pit and I saw the sun shining, I'd think, I'm going to get home as fast as I can, and then I'm going to get out into the countryside. And that's the reason I know all about nature, because most of the pits are in semi-rural areas. And so I would be out looking for mushrooms or whatever, and looking at the beauty of the trees. And so when I told Dan about the magnolia tree, I spotted it. As soon as I went to Parliament, I thought, we'll get round the parks. Everybody should have a St James's Park. Everybody should have a Hyde Park, and a Regent's Park, and Queen Mary's Garden, and a Richmond Park. So I think they're beautiful. And so when the BBC said they heard that I knew every blade of grass in every park, they were doing a programme at the weekend about the parks in London, They picked me, who lived 150 miles away. But I didn't know. And so I told them all about Isabella Plantation in the middle of Richmond Park. They didn't know where it was. Now it's full. April, May, June, you can't get in the car park. And so they sent Andrew Sachs, you remember him, Manuel. They sent him to interview me, and his job was to say, and what about Hampstead Heath? And what about Richmond? That's all he got to say. And he got a cue card as well. And then there were a few drops of rain, and the woman with the recorder said, that's it, we've got enough. And she looked at Andrew Sachs, and I whispered in her ear, and I said, why did we stop? She says, do you really want to know? She says, those few drops of rain dropped on his cue card and he couldn't read it. So, yeah, I enjoyed the park. And so when Dan came along and he wanted to know what I did in my spare time, when I went with the Tories or anybody for that matter, and I was in the parks, and so I showed him the magnolia tree, and you've all seen it. It is magnificent. It's one of the biggest magnolia trees I've ever seen. It's in a sheltered area at the side, just below the Serpentine Cafe in Hyde Park. And all those things I told him about. And little did I know that he'd have the capability to be able to put that on film, to provide that wonderful music, to do it in a manner that could have been, no better done than it has been in the film. And so for all those things, I think this kid will go a long way. He'll be a director of the future. He will be the new Ken Loach.
Dennis, I'm from Brighton and Radnor CLP.
Oh, wow, that's
so I think it's about time you paid us a visit.
Yeah.
Test your knowledge of the constituency.
Yeah, well, I do remember that well because, first of all, when I first got to Parliament in 1970, one of my best friends was the member for Brecon and Radnor, Kywin Roderick. And he was a bit of a left-winger like me. Kinnock was there as well, but Kywin told me, he said, be careful of that Kinnock. And he was right. And so anyway, that's how I first got to know about Brecon and Radnor. But I knew where it was situated, and I've been to it. But the most important thing was when Enoch Powell, at the time of Dolly the Sheep in the tabloid press, and stem cell research, and sadly a lot of people in Britain believed that stem cell research was a waste of time, because the tabloid press were producing Dolly the Sheep in the papers and saying that is what it means. And so people's minds were fashioned to believe that all this medical research was a waste of time. And yet, despite the fact that most people were going to vote with Enoch Powell to kill off stem cell research, somebody had to stop it. And a lot of people, including Dr. Winston, who's now in the House of Lords, I might tell you, as a result of my efforts, and he was the foremost in this research, and so he said, is there anything we can do to stop this bill? It was nearly through. All it needed was the finish of a third reading in the House of Commons, and then it would have been passed. Most of the Tory MPs are in favour. Enoch Powell was sitting there for Northern Ireland, and his bill was due to get its final third reading on the Friday. I decided to look at Erskine May, the Bible of the House of Commons, and in it said, a member may move a writ. A member, I thought, that's me. And normally it's the chief whip of the party who has the by-election, which would have been the Tories in this case. I thought, well, if I move that writ on the Friday, I'll be called first. A writ is always the first item of business. Normally it's all over in a minute. The chief whip moves, the Rick, that's the end of it. Nobody talks about it. But I thought, if I can get on my feet before Powell, I can take over that Friday till 2:30 and he won't get a chance to say a word. And that was my plan, but I had to keep my traction. Because if it had got out, the Tories would have moved the writ themselves for Brecon and Radnor, because there was a by-election pending and the Tory MP at the time had died or whatever, and the net result was that hardly anybody knew, apart from the Speaker of the House of Commons on the Thursday night. I went the latest possible time to tell him. And he said, "You what? You're going to move a writ? You're not allowed to use a writ." I said, "You read Erskine, mate." And sure enough, the Chief Clerk came back and he said, "Oh, it's right." And so I got the bit of blue touch paper to start the Friday morning off. And I filibustered for nearly 5 hours. And Enoch Powell never opened his gills. And he said to me as he walked out at 2:30, "I reckon without you, Skinner." Well, the important thing was I'd killed off his ban on stem cell research. I'd managed to keep it going. And every time now I see the television, as I did the other week, of a man had some stem cells taken out of his knee and stuck in his brain and saved his life. And it's happening all the time. And so when people say to me, "Well, you've never been on the front bench, Skinner, what have you done? You've always been Johnny Opposite," I always think about that wonderful day when I was able to win that battle, a very important battle, one which is now we've selected out as one of the top 20 speeches of the last 100 years in the House of Commons. Not bad, eh, for a minor?
Dennis, what's next?
Well, I thought this were a documentary. You see, this bloke did a documentary about me and the Ragged Trousers Philanthropist. And somebody came along and said, "Would you do 10 minutes, quarter of an hour on the Ragged Trousers Philanthropist anniversary, 100 years? And I said, "Well, I'll do more than that." I said, "I'll bring it up to date." I said, "Because the Ragged Trouser Philanthropists of today are still around. They might not live at Hastings, but they live all over the country. And they're people on food banks. They're people without 2 acres to rub together. And all those things." So I talked about those, and I brought the Ragged Trouser Philanthropist up to date. And he managed to get it at the Unite Trade Union Conference. It went down a storm, and then he come to me and he says he's going to do another. And I thought, well, it's another documentary. So I took him into Hyde Park and I showed him the magnolia tree and 1 or 2 other things. Little did I know we were on a totally new journey. And then we finished up in Bluebell Wood with my brother singing one of the songs my mother used to sing about the French lady from Paris. Tattooed from head to knee. On her jaw was the Royal Armoured Corps. This is a dual arm tandrate all the way. While on her back was the Union Jack. Could anybody wish for more? All up and down their spine was the Coldstream Guards in line. While on her lovely hips was a fleet of battleships. On her left kidney was a bird's eye view of Sydney. But what I liked best was the old crow's nest way down in gay Paris. And my mother had dementia, and every time the band on the piano came to play, they'd say, "Come on, Lucy," and they always wanted that one. It's a bit near the bone. And it wasn't typical of my mother, but by and large, she enjoyed that part of her life. Remember, some people with dementia can remember the songs from their youth. And I've been to many of the old folks' homes in my area and go to the early dementia classes. Unfortunately, Jeremy Vine of the BBC found out about this, and he sent a team up to do it, and it was on the radio one night with me singing Getting to Know You. So that's the story, and it is true that for a lot of people with dementia, not all of them, because there are several different forms of dementia, but for those with certain forms, the majority, they are able to sing because it comes from a different part of the brain than talking, and it's about the rhythm. And that's why it's important in our lives, and it's certainly very important in their lives, because you'd never believe the numbers of people that have joined in song and yet they don't even know the friend's name. And that's how my mother was. When I took her on the miners' welfare, and I thought, I'm going to check this out. People that stutter don't sing, don't stutter when they sing. Why is that? I assumed that it came from a different part of the brain, and sure enough it does. And that's why I've been able to help a lot of people with dementia to have a little tiny bit of extra addition to their life during the course of the past 20 years or whatever.
Okay, we'll make this the last one if that's okay.
Do I have to do something with this? That's fine, right, you can hear me. Oh, hi Dennis. Thank you for the film. I did enjoy that. As a fellow rebel, I was one of 6 Brighton councillors who were expelled by Kinnock in the early 90s.
Yeah.
I was prepared to go to prison for refusing to pay the poll tax. And I think that what we've got now, we've got a party back that's got passion back, that's got principles back, that are people like your brothers, like Jeremy, like yourself, who are prepared to put, our money where our mouth is, sort of stand by what we believe in. And when I was watching that film, and I remember that within the miners' strike, when I saw that Battle for Albury, the first bits that came on the news, it looked like a scene out of Battle for the Planet of the Apes, when they come down and they're mowing everybody down, and sort of that anger comes back again. So I was expelled in 92. What happened, I represented one of the poorest estates in Brighton, was elected with the biggest swing to Labour in the whole of the town, second highest Labour vote ever. When they put an imposed candidate in after I was expelled, a Tory for the first time took that seat, and that was the price that we paid for the witch hunts. And so I never wanted to join the Labour Party with Blair in power, but when Jeremy stood for leadership, like many others, I came back to the party, and it's been a really brilliant week. Your speech was brilliant. I'm sure Jeremy's will be tomorrow, and it's great to see all the young people, older people, sort of all of us back involved again. So I just want to say, thanks for all of that. And from a fellow rebel, and I don't even have to rebel anymore. There's no one to rebel against now. I'm not in the leadership anyway, so thanks.
Well, the Claycross Red Rebellion was similar, and it was at the time when Teddy came into power, and he decided to, for the first time ever, to shift the raising of rents from the local level to the central government. It had never happened before. I don't think some people that are around today realise it. But when they started getting central government to administer local government, it began with the decision by Ted Heath to raise rents £1 a week in every town and city in Britain. Now, there was a massive uprising. People in Liverpool, people in Sheffield, people here, there and everywhere were never going to implement the Act. But my 2 brothers were amongst 11 councillors at Claycross, and I was on that council before I went to Parliament, and we never raised rents for 12 years, and therefore they had to send in a commissioner to get the rent. And he didn't get 1 penny piece because the tenants wouldn't pay him. That's how it happened. So it wasn't about anybody putting money in the pocket. My brothers and the rest of them were doing an honourable thing for the whole of Britain. And then they got kicked out by Lord Denning in the House of Lords. It went that far in terms of the legal shift from one place to another. It finished up at the House of Lords, and Lord Denning called them crooks. They never had a penny piece out of it. I mean, when you think about the way they were treated, and they were kicked out of local government for 14 years and made bankrupt for 14 years. That's what Graham and David and the rest of their friends got way back in 1974. So that was the battle. Orgreave was another, in which if we'd have had mobile phones at Orgreave, like we've got today, when we could have taken the pictures of all those people in the army, in the suits, worn by the police, and if we could have had that social media connecting one another up in the coalfields, we could have won that 84 strike with or without Kinnock or Norman Willis. That's how important it was. That's how close it was. But we didn't get any help from the TUC, and all it really needed was another union to open up a second front against the government, put in a big pay claim at 30%. They would have run for cover, wouldn't they? And the net result is that we would have won that battle. What was it about? It was about us saying there were 75 pits to close, and Thatcher and their lying ministers saying there were only 20. The cabinet papers were released 25 years after Thatcher had died. That's what happens in Parliament. The cabinet papers had to be released, and it showed that there were 75 pits to close. They lied, and all their ministers lied for years on end in Parliament. That's the truth of it, and that's why we deserved to win. We didn't, but we could have. And she actually imported more oil from Gaddafi. And what did we get from Gaddafi? A bag of raisins.
I'm just going to end it on a light. I'm just going to end it on a sort of light and not an app note, because we're in a cinema. Every time I speak to Dennis, the last thing we speak about is politics. And as you see from the film, he's a great sort of cinephile. So I always ask him about cinema, and I always think he's got a really, you can say he loves musicals as well. He's got a really interesting sort of theory on last year's, like, you know, love the Oscars, La La Land. You went to La La Land, were you?
No. I mean, songs from Oklahoma. Can you sing songs from The King and I? Can you sing songs from Carousel? Of course you can. Because they're memorable. And La La Land, it was supposed to be a memorable musical. I can't remember. I didn't leave the cinema humming the song. I couldn't do it today. So yes.
Give us the song then.
Pardon?
Give us the song to go on.
Oklahoma.
Sing us goodbye.
I can do one from The King and I. Getting to know you, getting to know about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me, getting to know you, putting it my way, but nicely. You are precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I'm with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed? Suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day. I'm finished with the one because I'm the only MP that's ever sung in the last 30 years at the Albert Hall. And they asked me after the miners' strike in 1986, we got it for free, and the left-wing bands said, could you write a song about Thatcher? I said, yeah, I'll do one. And so this is how it goes. I hear Thatcher and there's no one there. I smell Tebbit and his greasy hair. All the time he thought she walked on air. I wonder why, I wonder why. Leon's tossing in his sleep at night. Heseltine has lost his appetite. Stars they used to twinkle in her eyes, and now they're telling lies, and we know why.